friends! Today we've got another X-Men legend. We are checking out Rogue. I mean, not checking her out in like a sexy way. Not to say she's not pretty, but you know what I mean. So here is Rogue free from her packaging, and I gotta say, I love this design because it is the Jim Lee design from the 90s that was used in X-Men the Animated Series, and I love the Animated Series, but it's not a perfect sculpt. It's a very, very good sculpt, but it's not perfect. If we start by taking a look at the face itself is perfect, but then the problem you have is this bandana. Now, I like the sculpt on the bandana, but it's sort of a separate piece that's been stuck into this giant gaping hole that's been drilled into Rogue's skull, and I don't like how they chose to do this, where it's like a hole in her head that this has been plugged into. It makes it look like she has a hole in her head is the problem. They should have just like sculpted it sort of billowing in her hair with that awesome hair sculpt. The hair is an awesome part of the sculpt because it looks like it's billowing in the wind, and the jacket's also an awesome part. I love these pieces of the upper arms that are like all folded and wrinkly and got lots of cool sculpt lines in there. It's really good. But then we get down to the lower part of the arm, and I don't like how these are separate pieces, these parts of the gloves, because you push them up too high and then you see the green underneath. They should have just, ideally they would have sculpted them onto the forearm, but I guess they're reusing parts, so maybe they should have glued it on. And then there's a very similar problem with the boots. In the package, these pieces of the high-top boots were loose, and I guess you're supposed to just stretch them and push them up and down and make them stick into place. It works all right, but ideally this should have been sculpted on or glued in place. That would have been a lot better. But overall, her body has an awesome sculpt. And her body's just awesome. I mean, it's very similar to Jean Grey's body, but they're not the same. Because Rogue is just, like, wider and a little more muscly. And other than that, she's got the same sort of details as Phoenix, but she's got bigger boobs and a bigger butt. The paint is also pretty phenomenal, but when you start to look closer, it does have a few issues. Let's start with the head. Very clean paint apps on the head. I love the rosy cheeks, and the lips are also really good, but the rosy cheeks are impressive because they just fade away and they're so subtle and it's done really well. I like the colors they chose for the hair, but I mean, I don't know how accurate this part is because it's not white, it's more gray. But I do love this shiny green they chose for the headband and the rest of the body. And if you notice, the yellow on the body is really glossy, but then on like the boobs part, sorry, I don't want to touch your boobs so much, but like, it's matte. And I don't know, you can't see it that well on camera, but in person, it's very clear there's a difference between this piece and the rest of the body. And then, if you look right under the neck, there's some sort of slop there that I don't really like. There's also a little bit of slop right there on the butt cheek, but, you know, that's not part of the paint job that's going to be common in most figures, hopefully, but this thing being matte and that being glossy, I think is going to be something that most people notice. And if you really want her hair to be white, it's a little more gray than I think it should be, but the paint looks great in general. From a distance, you can't see any of these issues. And now let's talk about that articulation. So you can see I tried to get Rogue in sort of a flying pose, but one of the first problems you have with her is her hair gets in the way of her moving her head up. That's as much range as you can get. It also gets in the way of her going left and right. Like, you go too much and it just pops off the ball joint. And yeah, it's just a ball joint, not a ball and hinge joint. Now, they probably did that because they realized it'd be pointless with this hair in the way, but I mean, it's a flying figure that can't look up. And if you see my review of Superman figures, you know that's a big problem for me. But other than that, the articulation is pretty good. I mean, it's missing a few things. It's got a diaphragm joint, but no waist joint. But it doesn't matter, because the diaphragm joint swivels anyway, so it doesn't bother me. She's got hinge and swivel shoulders, and no bicep cut, but, you know, it doesn't bother me because we got the Hasbro elbows that hinge and swivel wrists, too. She's got ball joint hips. Only go out that wide, but that's fine. Lots of Marvel Legends only go out that wide. Cut thighs, double knees. They kind of mess with the high-top boot extra pieces, like I said before. And she's got hinge and pivot rocker ankles. The only downside to the articulation is that there's no hinge in the ball joint, and she can't look up for flying poses. Other than that, I got no problems with the articulation. It's very good. This was Rogue in her packaging. It was pretty standard, the same we've seen with all the other X-Men, Marvel Legends figures. On the back, still have figures in the wave that you need to build Juggernaut. I'm only missing Wolverine to build Juggernaut and missing Deadpool too, but he doesn't come with a Build-A-Figure piece, so it doesn't bother me as much. Inside the tray, there's no twist ties or anything. But that could happen. Everything just pops out, even the head, even though it's not supposed to. Now let's talk accessories. Rogue's a little light in the accessories department, but she still gets some good stuff. She gets the left leg of the Juggernaut Build-A-Figure, who I'm so excited about building, so I'm so close to finishing, but it's not too important for this review. What's important for this review is the one accessory Rogue really comes with, their hand. It's an alternate hand, it's ungloved, and I guess that explains why. This is a separate piece, so you can take it all the way off and have it look like her gloves all the way off. And then she can touch people and steal their memories and their powers and touch. Now it's scale time! Rogue stands just a hair under 6.5 inches tall, seems just right for Marvel Legends, or other 6-inch scale superhero figures. And of course here she is with the other X-Men characters from the same wave. At the end of the day, I really love this Rogue figure. I'm surprised I had so many negative things to say about her, but those are just nitpicks. Don't let that stuff deter you. Aside from the fact that she can't look up, which is a real complaint, but is not that big of an issue, everything else is very minor and doesn't matter. Rogue is an amazing figure, and she's a must-have for any X-Men display. Go out and get her, friends. Until next time.